Welcome back to News Plus. I'm Mark Seagraves, and now it's time for our entertainment critic, Willie Waffle. A little bit different this week. He's not reviewing a movie or even interviewing a big movie star. This week, Willie sits down with Mother Dolores Hart, the first nun to ever kiss Elvis.
Joining us on News Plus today is Mother Dolores. She's been serving the Lord for almost 50 years now, but before she joined the Abbey, she was quite a famous movie star. Many people probably know you as Dolores Hart, the star of Where the Boys Are and several other movies, Broadway productions. And I think the biggest question is probably the one we're just going to throw out there first thing. You know, you're about 24 years old in 1963. Just to put this in perspective for people, Taylor Swift is about 24 years old right now. On top of the world, you're on the verge of possibly a 7-year studio contract. You're starring in movies with Elvis, Warren Beatty, Marlon Brando. You're engaged to be married, and suddenly you hear a calling.
That's right.
You left Hollywood, and I think about this today. I can't think of anybody else who's 24 years old right now, maybe 99.99% of the people out there who would say, I'm going to walk away from that to serve the Lord. So my big question to you is, why did you do that?
I don't know that it's explainable, but I think the one thing that will give a hint, have you ever met someone and you're in love, and you know it doesn't matter where you go, what you do, you just have to be with that person, because something inside of you tells you this matters. And I think I've been going to Regina Loudis as a guest off and on for 5 years, and I then got engaged to marry Don. And it was Don who kind of pushed the button on me one night at a party when he said, you just weren't there tonight. Do you really love me? I said, Don. He said, yeah, I'm talking to you. I want to know what's going on in you. And I thought, so do I. I wonder, he's right. So I said, Don, let me go back to Regina Loudis for a few days, think this over. And I went back that time and I talked to the abbess. And it was that time I went for a walk up in the hill where she founded the Abbey. And it was snowing. And I got up there and I said, this is where I want to be. Why am I making everything else so important? Why am I going to buy my life when my life is given where it's given? And I went back and she said, what do you want to do? I said, I want to marry Don, I want an Oscar, and I want... and she said, I don't want to know the wants. I want to know what is in you. And I said, I think this is it.
And this wasn't a sudden decision. You had been a devout person throughout your life. You were still going to church every single day, even while you were starring with Elvis in these movies. I mean, out in the middle of Hollywood, out in the middle of the party scene. And there you are every day in the church at the pew.
Well, I was a convert. And a convert as a little girl. And there's a very funny story. I won't go into it long, but when you have this fast to midnight, all the kids got chocolate milk and cookies and things to eat. And one day I said to the sister, I would love to have bread with the children. She thought I meant the real thing. So she said, if you want that, you have to come to the classes. I said to my grandmother, well, what do you think? And she said, however you can get free breakfast, doesn't matter to me.
Well, and you throughout your career, you're this growing star. You're getting bigger roles, better roles. I mean, people now bill you as the nun who kissed Elvis. And even in the middle of all that, I remember hearing you were starring on Broadway with George Papard, and that's when you came into contact with the Abbey. Am I correct about
That's
that?
right.
Yeah. And how did that happen?
Well, I'd been there for our show had been on now almost 9 months. And I was really getting tired and dopey. The policeman saw me standing at the corners, just blinking at the red light. Said, where are you going, girl? And I knew I was really tired. So a friend of mine said, I know a place you can rest. And she sent me up to the Abbey.
Wow.
And I went up to Connecticut. And the first time I was there, I said, this is amazing. And I did talk to the abbess that time.
Yeah.
And I said to her, do you think I'm the stuff of what's... And she said, no, babe, you go back and do your Hollywood thing. I think you need to go and make a lot more movies. So she sent me back.
Wow.
And she was very wise, because people who try things that they're too young for often go flat on their face.
Well, now let's get a feel too. How did your family react? How did your friends react? I know you were close with Warren Beatty. How did these people react to this decision?
Well, I couldn't tell anyone except Don, who I was engaged to, who was furious. And incidentally to say, he stayed a friend of mine his entire life.
Yeah.
Just died about 6 months ago.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
But my friends didn't know until I got in. And then I went to the guest house and I wrote letters to everyone. Oh boy, you've never met such angry, disappointed, hurt. What's wrong with you, Dolores? Have you been drinking? Are you on drugs? Very, very few people said congratulations.
Oh, no. Well, and I know, I know you've brought this up. Don, of all people, is probably the person outside of you who is most affected by this. And you had all stayed close for many years. I mean, if I remember correctly, Don never married anybody.
No, he didn't.
No.
No, in fact, he said to me, all love relationships don't end at the altar. I'm going to stay with you all the way. And I thought to myself, oh, I've heard stories like that from guys before. I thought that I can't ask anything like that of him. This is my choice. But he did.
Wow.
He every Christmas, every Easter, twice a month, he'd give me a call. He was a great friend.
Yeah. And you were out there in Hollywood, and I'm sure, you were one of the most beautiful women in movies of the day. You're still a very beautiful woman. And, there were probably many stars. You worked with Marlon Brando. You worked with Elvis. I'm sure all of them were trying to get your attention as well. And how was that life as a very devout person?
Well, I tell you, sometimes it was difficult. I went to England once to do a film, and they thought I should go with Peter Sellers on dates. So we went to Ascot one day, and at night we came back to my apartment, and Peter said to me, do you mind if I come in a while? And I said, no, Peter, I can't do that. So I said good night, and I went in, kicked off my heels, and I went back in my bedroom, and I opened the door, and there is Peter in my bed, and his clothes in a pile over. And I turned around to the door, and I said, Peter, I really have to tell you, this is not my way. I don't think I'll be any help to you. He said, no, I could teach you a lot. And he said, and besides, if you were my girlfriend, just see the publicity it would make for you. And I said, I know, but I don't think that's the way I want to go. And suddenly I looked over, and I saw a letter that I had been writing to Mother Placid at the Abbey. And this thing went through me. Are you going to finish that letter? I slept with Peter Sellers last night. And I thought, no way. I can't go. There's not a double standard. It would not work. So I said, Peter, I think you have to go. And he said, well, would you mind leaving the room while I get dressed? And I said, not at all. Yeah. We remained friends, incidentally.
Well, that's wonderful. Well, and you have had this fascinating life, I think, both in Hollywood and out of Hollywood. That's why you're here. You've written a new book about your life and about your experiences. And, I think we know a lot about the Hollywood side of things, but what is life like at the Abbey? I mean, you're a cloistered nun. I think a lot of us know the term, and there's maybe this thought that, I guess they milk cows all day long and pray. I mean, what is life like at the Abbey?
Well, they come out with surprises. Like the other night, um, the novices and the young professed, they had been working with a friend of mine, Matt Mittler, who has a group of actors in New York, and they came up to do charades and to try, have some fun with them. So they did a whole thing on Shakespeare, which was improv, just a play on Shakespeare, and they were hysterical. And at the end of it, when everybody collapsed in laughter, and one of the young new ones who had just came in a few days ago, she says, "I never knew it was going to be like this, Mother." Yeah. So you never know. Where God is, the most unbelievable things can happen, especially if you like the people.
Well, and how did people accept you when you first got to the Abbey in 1963? I mean, were they suspicious of your motives? Were they accepting? How was that transition?
Well, I think people were very worried about me. I've said to one sister, "Is my collar straight?" And she said, "Nobody's looking at you here, Dolores." So I felt, there's a little, and it was a different era too. Yeah. It was right after Second Vatican II, and that had not entered into the community yet. So they're very straight-laced, and there was even a group there that was trying to oust the abbess in order to get, the Bells of St. Mary's kind of thing going there. And so I knew that Mother Benedict, who was the abbess, or was going to be the abbess, she had founded it, but she had a lot of work to do. So I understood that it wasn't all roses, and so I went up to her one day, and I had a list in my pocket. I had been there about 6 months, and I said, "Mother, these are what I think should change here." And she said, "Oh," and she looked at it, and she said, "I think maybe you could change a little first. Do you think you could learn the rules, and then maybe we could talk about this?" So I thought, oh boy, I've really done it. But 7 years later, after I took my vows, she brought me up to her office. She went to her drawer and pulled out this paper, and she said, "You have some very good ideas here. I want you to try to implement them now."
Oh, wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, and you've been on an amazing journey over the past couple of years. You first started telling your story in the short documentary, God is the Bigger Elvis, nominated for an Academy Award. Mm-hmm. And I think, if I remember correctly, you're one of the only clergy members who's actually a voting member of the Academy. Am I right about that?
I think I'm the only nun.
Okay.
And I had joined the Academy in 1960, mm-hmm. after Where the Boys Are. But when I first entered, the abbess felt it would be too much for me to do that and to really learn what I needed to know, which we sing the office in Latin 7 times a day and once in the middle of the night.
Wow.
And so there's a big big lesson to learn there. And so she said, "Can you put this on hold?" So I told the Academy, that I would be just a holding member. So in 1990, when I had my 25th anniversary, I got a call from Carl Malden, who said, "Happy anniversary, Mother. Do you think you're ready to come back to the Abbey?" No, the Academy.
The Academy.
I confused. "Do you think you're ready to do this now? Because I think it would be a good thing for us to have a nun there." And I said, "Well, I would love it." And he said, "I'll send you a machine where you can play the discs that will be sent to you, and you become active again, because your point of view might give us something to think about."
Well, and I was going to ask, how do you see all of the movies? Because the Academy is very strict about making sure you see the movies that are nominated in the different categories.
Well, we have what we call a Lectio Divina, which is a time to read, and that's a period in the daytime. Well, Mother said to me, "Now you've got a mission. You take your Lectio time with the movies." So I have an office down in the basement where I've got my birds.
Oh, gosh.
And so my parrot, Toby, and I would sit, and we would watch the we'd watch the films, and sometimes you'd get to a point where you knew this isn't going to work.
I've seen a couple of those movies too.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us on News Plus, and I want to let all the viewers know, you can go to dc50tv.com right now. You can win one of 10 autographed copies of Mother Dolores' book, and you can learn more about her amazing adventures in Hollywood, her amazing adventures with the Lord. And thank you so much for sharing some of your time with us today.
Thank you, and thank you for offering my book. It's a great gift to me.
Oh, thank you so much. And we'll be back right after this.